Yo, welcome back to Eat, Sleep, Breathe Hoops with your boy Nikki P, man. You know who it is, you know what it is. Y'all see the thumbnail, man. It's a bit of an interesting topic right here that is starting to garner a little more attention over time. Something that was never talked about in the past, player ownership and equity, and these players potentially having equity in the teams while they're still in their playing days. So ladies and gentlemen, basketball fans and students of the game alike, today we explore a question that's been growing louder in the halls of the NBA arenas, whispered in the locker rooms, and now spoken boldly in the press. What if NBA players could own equity in the teams they play for? And further, what happens if they can't and decide to walk away and build something of their own? This idea challenges the foundation of American sports power, and it reveals deep truths about ownership, labor, race, and wealth. Let's start with the players and get into the player perspective and the pros of equity ownership. The superstars, the ones putting their bodies on the line every night, drawing fans, selling jerseys, and building the brand of the league. We've seen massive contracts and long-term generational wealth. Steph Curry has made over $400 million in his career, but even he said in a recent interview, "I still feel underpaid because I don't have equity." And he's not wrong, or is he? While his salary is astronomical, the value he generates for the Golden State Warriors and the NBA as a whole is far beyond what he receives. If players had equity, they could benefit not just from the game they play, but from the growth of the business itself that they majorly contribute to. Players are the product. Fans don't buy tickets to see owners in suits. They come to see Steph hit threes from 30 feet, Giannis dunk on people's heads from the free throw line, and Luka make magic with the dribbles in the post game and just his overall complete game in the clutch. The players are the true engine of the league, so why shouldn't they own a piece of what they're building? Economic empowerment and decision making is a big piece of the puzzle. With equity, players would have a seat at the table. They could influence decisions around player wellness, community initiatives, media deals, and more. Imagine players being involved in shaping league policy, not just reacting to it, and not just having power through the Players Association and the Players Union. Modeling black economic control. Roughly 75% of the NBA is black, yet almost all the owners are white. Go figure, huh? Equity flips that script. If even a few top-tier black players could own part of their teams, they begin to challenge a system that has profited immensely off of black backs and black labor without proportionate black ownership. The player perspective, the cons and the complexities. Ownership isn't all upside. There's conflict of interest. A player owner could face awkward situations. What happens if your teammate underperforms and you're both in the locker room, but you're also on the board of directors trying to trade him? That could be awkward, be awkward situations in the locker room and just ruin team chemistry. The team dynamics and salary negotiation. How do you fairly negotiate your own contract when you're also on the ownership side? It could create rifts, resentment from teams, or accusations of favoritism. And the lack of time and expertise. Players are focused on training, recovery, performance, wellness, health, nutrition, and so on and so forth. Ownership is a full-time business job. Not every player is equipped or even interested in the responsibility that comes with being a stakeholder. Some may take losses or be manipulated by smarter businessmen behind the scenes that are trying to backstab them or, get one over on them, as they say. And it's limiting access. What if only elite players get ownership? The Currys, the LeBrons, the KDs? Then we're recreating another elite class, just in sneakers instead of suits. Most NBA players don't make generational money. And would equity be fairly distributed? What if there's a few role players out there that are more business savvy than some of these elite players and would do well and, be better suited for a type of ownership role, but just because they're not a superstar in the league, they don't get that opportunity, while someone who's better at them at the sport, but not as business savvy may get that opportunity. It would be a lot of back and forth. The ownership perspective and why they'd resist, coming from the opposite side, not the player side. Now we're getting into the ownership side. From the NBA owner side, allowing players to gain equity is a threat to the current hierarchy. That's a microcosm for a larger macrocosm of how this country actually operates. The fear would be there. But let's get back to it. There would be a power shift. Let's be clear. Ownership is not just about money. It's about control. If players have ownership, they gain power over decision making. That disrupts the traditional top-down model. Rich owners don't want their employees becoming their equals. And quite frankly, rich white owners don't want black folks becoming their equals. There'd be a threat to exclusivity. Franchises are worth billions nowadays. If current players get equity, that dilutes existing shares, meaning current owners would lose money or leverage. Not to mention the exclusive club of NBA ownership suddenly becomes more accessible to athletes who were once seen as labor. Sound familiar? Legal and competitive complications. How do you handle salary caps when a player is also part owner? How do you prevent abuse, tampering, or insider trading scenarios? It gets legally murky really fast. And let's not even get to the gambling side of things and how that could play out. Fear of a mass exit. Here's the nightmare scenario for all of these owners. The top 20 players, Bron, Steph, Giannis, Tatum, Wemby, and the list goes on to fill out the rest of that 20. If they all collectively got together and said, hey, we're leaving the NBA and we're starting our own league. Just like that, you got an NBA without its stars, a shell of itself. And if that happened, you know the majority of the black players in the NBA would follow and go over to that league and follow suit. And that would just leave a NBA with white owners and primarily white players, and that would not be an entertaining product to watch at all. And that business would lose money drastically. The NBA would probably shut down if something like that happened, and the owners would just have to take that L, and they would hate that. It's probably their biggest cash cow, owning these NBA teams, and at the drop of a hat, if that happened, they'd lose it all. What if players built their own league? Let's dream of that for a second, or rather, let's strategize. The Negro Leagues parallel. Back in the day when black players were barred from the Major League Baseball Association, they didn't wait for approval. They started their own leagues, which was far more talented, a dynamic, culturally rich ecosystem of elite talent, which was so great that after time, the MLB had no choice but to start taking these players because they saw how drastic of a talent disparity there was between the two leagues. What if NBA players did the same? Black players equal the entire product. If today's NBA lost all of its black talent, you're losing the league. At least 75 to 80% of it, the athleticism, the flash, the intensity, the greatness, and the global marketability. Let's not sugarcoat it. Without black players, the NBA doesn't exist in its current form, or possibly at all. Same with the NFL. The Big Three as a case study. Ice Cube, and if you ain't seen, if you're not too familiar with the Big Three, or even if you are, go watch my previous video I released, the Big Three Experience. Dope one, man. So let's get back to it. Ice Cube started the Big Three League, a 3-on-3 league with retired players. And while it hasn't toppled the NBA, it survived longer than many people have expected. They thought it was a joke at first, but here it is going on, I think, the 8th or the 9th season. So shout out and salute to Ice Cube. But behind the scenes, Ice Cube has been vocal, extremely vocal, about the NBA blackballing his league, discouraging sponsors, media coverage, and networks, which doesn't really make any sense because a lot of ex-players are, naturally are going from retiring in the NBA to playing in the Big Three. A lot of ex-NBA players love this league, so it doesn't make any sense really why the NBA ownership and commissioner aren't working hand in hand with the Big Three. As a matter of fact, they're doing the opposite, trying to, oppress it and restrict it. If Ice Cube faced that much resistance for a senior circuit, imagine what happens when prime NBA talent starts walking away. The NBA would retaliate in as many ways as they possibly could. Make no mistake, if the NBA sees its players inching toward independence, it will act. Expect legal threats, contract clauses preventing outside play, blacklisting, corporate interference to keep networks and sponsors in check. Because this isn't just about basketball, this is about economic rebellion. So potential solutions. Is there a middle ground to be met? What's the path forward, really? 1, create player equity funds. Instead of individual ownership, the league could create a player equity trust where a percentage of team growth is shared among players. It reduces the conflict of interest but also allows collective ownership. 2. Retirement-based equity. Players could earn shares that vest after they retire, ensuring they're not influencing team decisions while playing, but still reaping the long-term rewards. And 3. Expand the player association power. Strengthening the NBPA, to have more influence on league operations, investment decisions, and community ownership programs could give players more voice without full-blown ownership rights and ownership fights. At the heart of this conversation is one truth. The men generating the billions, mostly young black athletes, have for decades accepted a fraction of the wealth they helped create. Steph Curry doesn't feel underpaid because he's ungrateful. He feels underpaid because he knows his true worth, and he knows what he brings not just to the team, but to the entire business and the organization. He's aware that in Silicon Valley, innovators own equity. In Hollywood, actors become producers and directors. But in the NBA, players are expected to dribble, dunk, and shut up, as some of these white folks have said. While ownership cashes in on the rising tide, but tides turn. And maybe we're at the moment now where players start asking not just for paychecks, but for ownership, where they don't just chase legacy on the court, but begin building legacies off of it. If the NBA is smart, it'll find a way to evolve, to include players, especially the great ones, in equity talks before we do get to that fork in the road where the best players are really trying to defect from the NBA and really start their own league. The NBA would not want that. So they might want to start thinking about including players in some of these equity talks to shift with the times. If not, well, history shows us what happens when the labor walks away and builds its own table. And this time, the owners might be the ones sitting in the stands, watching from the cheap seats. Once again, it's your boy, Nikki P. This is Eat, Sleep, Breathe, Hoops. Thanks for tapping in with your boy. Man, we're going to keep growing this channel, man. Join the membership, subscribe, comment, all like, share with your friends that love the game of hoops, man, everything. And let's keep growing together. Until the next one, man, I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Peace.